Hello everyone, welcome to Ansarkari. So today we'll be taking up the newspaper for 4th of January. So moving forward, we have the first article. How trans person can change name, gender identity in official documents. So this article is talking about the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act 2019, and this act came into force 5 years ago in 2019, and the Karnataka High Court has now allowed a trans woman to change the name and gender on her birth certificates as well as the official documents that she has or he has. It has, and this came in after a person had changed their gender, and to ensure her official documents to reflect this, she had her name and gender identity change on her Aadhaar. Uh, this case is known as the Miss versus the State of Karnataka case, 2024 only. And she argued with the government, recalling Section 15, and she said that the section was extremely restrictive and it curtailed her right to life with dignity that was under Article 21 of the Constitution. So, the 2019 law explicitly says that the gender of a trans person shall be recorded in all official documents for the certificate and that they shall be entitled to change the first name in the birth certificate and all the other official documents relating to the identity of such a person. So, Karnataka High Court implemented a well settled rule of legal interpretation talking about special which shall prevail over the general, and the idea that a general or should not get in the way of a layman to deal with a specific issue. So the application process involves an application with the district magistrate and affidavit declaring their gender identity with a medical certificate proving it. So this is the way one can change their gender, and this is, it is important to change with the changing time. It's a nice reflection of that. Then we have the next article. What US needs to do to get all the skills it needs. So this is talking about H-1B, which is a visa program, and how in this India should be smartly and proactively suggesting reforms that put forward America's needs as well as they address their fears. So this gained attention amid the political debates. And first of all, what is the H-1B visa program? So it is basically a non-immigrant visa which allows US-based companies to hire and employ foreign workers for special jobs like science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and IT. So your STEM and IT. And it was introduced in 1990, which would help US employers to address skill shortage with qualified US workers when they are unavailable. So it would basically allow temporary entry into the US for purposes like tourism, business, work, study, or even a medical treatment. So this visa can be issued for a maximum of 6 years, and after this, the visa holder either must leave the US or for at least 12 months before reapplying for another H1B visa or apply for a permanent residence, which is a green card. So talking about dominance of Indians in this, so people born in India are the largest beneficiaries and they account for more than 70% of all the approved H-1B petitions annually since 2015. And this is what the H-1 visa is. So, apart from that, this article is talking about where will the biggest skill shortages be in US. So that would include AI, machine learning, automation, cloud computing, cloud security, and cloud infrastructure. And the firms, they are very desperate to hire security and system architects, but they have to delegate these duties to existing staffs, and other plans are held. So the H1B is the smartest way out where they can address their issues without having much of problems. So question of lower wages also comes in because of the shift in currencies and everything. So the big US tech, they pay high wages to the skilled employers, uh, and subsidiaries of Indian tech is typically lower. And another thing to notice in this is the skill is also a bit lower. So what the article is mainly talking about, the H1B visa. Apple agrees to pay $95 million to settle lawsuit accusing Siri of eavesdropping. Now, this is talking about how some recorded conversations were shared with advertisers in an attempt to sell their products, and how Apple has agreed to pay certain money to settle the lawsuit. So, Apple over here isn't acknowledging any wrongdoing in the settlement, which still must be approved by the US. And lawyers in this case have proposed scheduling a court hearing to review this. So the thing to notice over here is, when it comes to technology, privacy is the one that should be protected most. And such claims and such instances, they highlight the right to privacy that one has, and also they highlight the dangers or the challenges which comes with technology and how we must tackle them while ensuring that no one's right is violated. Then we have the next article, loneliness hits health through effect on protein level. So this study states, basically there's a study that was conducting stating that loneliness and social isolation, they impact the level of proteins that are associated with various diseases, even death. So over here, a statistical technique was which was called Mendelian randomization that was used to basically examine the relationship between social isolation and loneliness on one hand and proteins on the other. So it was found that 175 proteins were associated with social isolation and 26 proteins were associated with self-reported loneliness, and many of them were overlapping. So they give us a clue to the biology underpinning poor health among people who are socially isolated or lonely, highlighting why social relationships play such an important part in keeping us healthy. So it's a very good link between health as well as the why social interaction, why people are important. Then we have the next article, Sangpo Dam, India's option. So China has basically approved the construction of the world's largest hydropower project on the Zangpo River in Tibet, and it's also called the Brahmaputra River in India. So it enters India through the eastern part, and China has basically said that the dam will help them in a lot of energy gains, and it would move away from conventional energy sources and achieve the net carbon neutrality by 2016. But the thing is, the dam could dam's construction would impact the flow of water from China to India, and this region is also among the world's most ecologically fragile and earthquake prone. So concerns have been raised extensively, such as to cases where they're talking about prevention of diseases, coordination, and exchange of information, which is required between both the countries. And in this 1997 United Nations Convention on the Law of Non-Navigational Use of International Watercourse can play a role. And in this, most importantly, cooperation, communication is very important between both the countries, and it plays a very big role which would require India having an honest dialogue and essentially dissuade them from taking up projects of this magnitude. So communication between between both the countries is important over here, and cooperation since we're neighbors. Year of the economy. So this article is talking about how in the year 2025 India should focus more on stability as well as social harmony, and how the past incidents should be looked upon as learnings, like the Europe witnessing the rise of right wing parties in the French and German elections, and in Japan, the Liberal Domestic Party, which has ruled the country since 1955, also suffered major losses. And even in our own country, the BJP party had managed to form the government for the third consecutive time with the help of allies. So mostly the year 2024 ended with instability in most of the countries globally. So in just a few years, has scaling its economy and leading to a healthy GDP growth rates. But over here, it's also important to address challenges like unemployment, stagnant exports, which ring alarm bells. So, indication towards a healthy social political environment is the key to enhance private capital flow as well as a strong economic growth. Social harmony are of utmost importance to achieve the economic growth goals, with China registering almost 10% GDP growth for 30 successive years between 1980 and 2010. So we all should collectively work towards a better economy. The looming threat to federalism and democratic tenets. So, the ruling party in India, BJP, it has been pursuing the one nation, one election framework with all seriousness. So, if we look into the historical context, the Election Commission of India, in the initial phase, it used to conduct simultaneous elections for both the parliament and state assemblies, and this was disrupted by the outset of imposition of article 356, which is known as the president's rule, and that was termed as a dead letter by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, which was to be used sparingly. So then we talk about a strong threat to the stability of state government, which has been defection mostly, and the democratically elected government has fallen of legislators who have changed sides over various enticement. So this is where the petition of one nation, one election comes into a line state election cycles with Lok Sabha, and particularly Article 83 and 172, which guarantee a 5-year term for parliament and state assemblies. So, challenges in terms of logistics in implementing the one nation, one election or monumental, giving to India's large electoral base. So, we have over 900 million voters, and conducting elections would require a large amount of resources and also a systemic reforms which would very be necessary to conduct elections on such a large scale. So the erosion of federalism would indeed be a frontal attack to the constitution-based structure. So even if we move towards a new approach, it is very important to address that we move forward with a systemic routine, a systemic governance, and have proper steps, reforms necessary before taking any steps. So basically, a true democratic government requires much more than routine exercise. It also requires a simultaneous elections. India cross-border insolvency and legal reform. So, the growth of international trade has amplified cross-border insolvency and challenges, which highlight the need for elective regulation and address domestic insolvency in Indian Insolvency Act of 1848, which was introduced as the first Insolvency Act. And after independence, these laws have remained unchanged, and it was only in the 1990s when economic liberalization and pressure of globalization came that we required a comprehensive insolvency law, which led to forming of committees such as the Iradi Committee of 2000, Mitra Committee 2001, and Iradi Committee 2005. They recommended adopting the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law model law on cross-border insolvency. So, the National Company Law Tribunal, it identified two critical issues, primary being the absence of reciprocal arrangement between India and Netherlands for cross-border insolvency resolution, and the non-notification of these sections by the central government, making them legally unenforceable. So, the Insolvency Law Committee and the Cross Border Insolvency Rules Regulation Committee, they identified the shortcomings of the current framework while recommending adopting the model law when it comes to such cases. And after the adoption of this, the adoption of the Judicial Insolvency Network guidelines and its modalities of a quota code communication, which would modernize judicial coordination, enhancing transparency, and improving efficiency in handling cross border matters. Also, restricting civil courts from exercising jurisdiction over insolvency matters, including cross border cases. So, to resolve these challenges in ensuring effective management of cross border cases, it is necessary to expand the power of NCLT, which is the National Company Law Appellate Tribunal, and it is also considered the cross border insolvency protocol. Water woes. India needs to deal with rising level of nitrate in groundwater. So, what happens when nitrate level rises in the groundwater? So, this comes up with two main concerns. First is methemoglobinemia, which is reduced ability of RBCs to carry oxygen, which also sometimes causes blue baby syndrome, which is in infants. And the bigger problem is once the nitrates in groundwater rises to the surface and becomes part of lakes and ponds, the algal bloom turtles and the health of aquatic ecosystem is also questioned. So, the Rajasthan, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu, they have reported the largest content of nitrate contamination, and even fluoride concentration has been seen exceeding in the states like Rajasthan, Haryana, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, and Telangana. So it is a good sign that India now has a robust scientific system to assess and monitor the health of groundwater blocks, and there also needs to be focus on awareness programs which would help contain the crisis as well. So it is very important to address these issues. And now the second step is awareness. And when we start looking for solutions for the problem as well. Losing momentum. So several economic indicators which were released over the past weeks are bad news for the finance ministry, and RBI hoped for a growth rebound in the second half of 2024-2025 early quarter. So the GDP growth was slipping to 5.4% in the second quarter, and policymakers have acknowledged the slowing consumption demand led by the stream spending trends in urban India. Bank credit growths have slowed for the fifth straight month in November, while core infrastructure sectors, about 40% of industrial output, expanded at 4-month high pace of 4.3%. So the new growth rate for major consumer states such as Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat, and persistent construction in Andhra Pradesh and the few northeastern state also needs close scrutiny. So GST research and other recent indicators, they still suggest that inter consumption is still a concern. India pledges to support Maldives to help navigate economic issues. So Maldives for India is a very concrete expression of India's neighborhoods first neighborhood policy. And Maldives is one of India's key maritime neighbors in the Indian Ocean region and overall bilateral ties, including areas of defense and security. Now, when we talk about significance of Maldives for India, so the first is strategic location. It holds immense strategic importance in the Indian Ocean. Second is the cultural links that both the countries share and the historical connection dating back to the century. So it's made the first half of 12th century when Buddhism was a principal religion in the Maldives island. And there is also an inscription of Vajrayana Buddhism, which has existed in the Maldives in the ancient times. Apart from that, a stable and prosperous Maldives aligns India's neighborhood's first policy, which promotes peace and security in the region. Then talking about India's significance for Maldives. So firstly is the essential supplies of everyday essentials. This includes rice, spices, fruits, vegetables, and medicine. Apart from that, India also aids in building Maldives infrastructure by providing materials such as cement and rock boulders. Second, education. It also serves as a primary education provider for Maldivian students who pursue higher education in the Indian institutions. That includes scholarship for deserving students. Then comes disaster assistance, and India has been a constant source of aid during crisis. So this includes tsunamis, drinking water shortages, even support during the COVID-19 pandemic, and security provider. So this includes the coup attempt in 1988 through Operation Cactus and conducting joint naval exercises for the protection of the Maldives. So, joint exercises include Equivarian, Dosti, and Ekatha. Even India's dominance in Maldives tourism, which also boosts the source market for the Maldives since COVID-19 pandemic. And Indians account for 11.2% of total tourist arrivals in Maldives. So that is why India also now manages to support Maldives in its economic issues. So, calling India's first responder status for the Indian Ocean archipelago. Uttarakhand to develop a study to monitor glacial leaks. So, the Uttarakhand State Management Authority is developing a detailed action plan for the comprehensive study and regular monitoring of glacial lakes in the state. And it has identified 13 glacial lakes in Uttarakhand. And the aim is to develop a foolproof system for monitoring the lakes with various equipments like water level sensors, automatic weather stations, and thermal imaging devices, and which would be funded by the NDMA. Just regarding Vande Bharat sleeper train seat top speed of 180 kilometers per hour. Successful trials of the train, and this would help in faster transportation of resources as well as of people, and good step. JJ cluster celebrate as PM Modi inaugurates 1600 flats. So this article is regarding the relocation of the JJ clusters, And these flats were part of the India Delhi's Development Authority in the Situ slum rehabilitation project, under which it basically seeks to construct apartments near slums to relocate residents of the Chuggi Chopdi clusters. So, this is a step towards improved infrastructure and the upliftment of the lower class. Addressing the needs and problems of the poor is very important when we talk about developing. Union Health Ministry monitors HMPV outbreak in China. So this article is talking about Health Ministry closely monitoring the alleged outbreak of human metapneumovirus virus in China. So till now, India has not registered any unusual spike in winter respiratory diseases, and China has been experiencing a surge in these cases, particularly in children under 14 years. And the symptoms they mainly include cough, fever, shortness of breath with potential complications like bronchitis and pneumonia. So it's basically like any other respiratory virus which causes flu-like symptoms, and it was discovered in 2001, belonging to the Pneumonidae family, along with respiratory syncytial virus. So it is important to be ready in case we also start experiencing surge in such cases. Inside the Army Sports Company for her. So, for more than 2 decades, the Army has been supporting and producing elite athletes through its boy sports company. So, 7 months ago, the institution also allowed entry of girls into the Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh institutions. And this came in after the induction of women soldiers. So before that, women below the rank of an officer were not allowed, but after the induction of the soldiers came in, that is when women were also allowed entry into this. So they train athletes and young teenagers to the battle-hardened Olympians. And when we talk about Army's original boy support sports company, this was terminated in 1976 and was restructured in 1991 in collaboration with the Sports Authority of India. So, why do parents send their children over here? So, one of the main reasons is the children over here get the possibility of a direct entry into the army, non-commissioned officers, and direct entry into the junior commissioned officers. So this is basically opens the way towards gender equality, having same opportunity for both boys and girls. So 24 of 1100 were chosen for athletics, weightlifting, archery, boxing, and in the Madhya Pradesh Center, 11 of 1200 were selected for training in shooting. Delhi schools fare much better in digitalization than national average. So this article is regarding the school adjusting their modes of technology between online, offline, or hybrid due to the pollution related curves. And it show the data. It also shows the percentage of city schools with digital facilities, which was significantly higher than the national average. And 99.1% of Delhi schools have functional desktops, which compared to 32.4% across the country, and 74% of the schools have smart classrooms as well. So, talking about the digital divides, the private schools and the government schools in digitalization, since 50% of the private unaided schools in Government and 43% of government aided schools have mobile phones for teaching purposes in comparison to the 30% of government schools. So we have 70% of government schools having smarter classrooms in the private schools. And this number basically went up after the pandemic, which fuels the increase in digitalization. And since everyone had to shift to the online mode, but the issue comes in struggling to narrow the gap between private and government school when it comes to digital infrastructure. So the data over here shows the mobile phones for teaching, integrated devices, and smarter classrooms. Then we have the next article, poverty below 5%, urban rural gap reducing. So India's poverty fell sharply from close to 22% in 2011 to 5% in 2023-24, with minimal incidence of extreme poverty and a shrinking of the urban rural gap. So, at an aggregate level, the poverty rates in India could now be in the range of 4 to 4.5%, with minimal existence of extreme poverty. So, the urban rural gap has been reducing. EVs don't need additional subsidies. So, the electric vehicles details industries have asked for infrastructure status for battery charging system when it comes to EVs, which would allow them access the loans at a cheaper rate and benefits of priority sector. So when we talk about the EV sector, it does not need new subsidies or incentives, and the question is that the ones currently present are appropriate to give them a kickstart. So, to expand the charging infrastructure, the Petroleum and Explosive Safety Organization, it has come up with a consultation paper on guidelines to make it easier to set up charging stations at petrol pumps. And basically, having more charging incentives at the local petrol pumps so that EVs don't face much of problems. And over here, even the companies, they were asked to speed up with their inputs on safety standards for the two-wheelers as well. Since the safety standard for the three and four-wheelers have already been notified. So the aim is to make the current system more safer and giving it a proper safety standard rather than introducing new subsidies or incentives in this system right now. Witness the immense potential of rural India at Grameen Bharat Mahotsav. So over here we can talk about the rural India's growth recently. How we have the HCES has revealed historic low in the share of food expenditure in rural households, which is 46%, which indicates how the basic needs are met. And over here, we can talk about agriculture reforms and technological advancement. So, the implementation of agriculture reforms and the adoption of modern technologies has played a crucial role, which helps boost the rural India productivity. So, over here, we can talk about promotion of high yielding seed varieties, which improves irrigation techniques, uh, increasing the crop yields, and government initiatives such as Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sanchai Yojana, which have also contributed to this growth. Then we can talk about rural infrastructure development. So investments have been made in developing rural infrastructure, leading to better connectivity, access to markets, and overall economic activities. So over here, the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana has played a very important role where it constructs all-weather roads connecting remote villages to nearby towns. Even the Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana, the National Rural Livelihood Mission, which focuses on developing rural infrastructure such as community resources centers and production centers, even promoting rural entrepreneurship and skill development, and rural digital connectivity and e-governance. Over here, initiatives like BharatNet and the Common Service Centers, where it delivers various government to citizen services in rural areas. DigiLocker glitch sparks backup demands. So, DigiLocker outage disrupted the fintech KYC project process, and experts they call for a backup system since UPI Aadhaar DigiLockers are vital for the digital services. So, the DigiLocker affected many government websites, leading to slow or no responses. So a possible solution over here could be government having more websites or having more platforms in like DigiLocker in place, so that a platform like DigiLocker is not overloaded, and we could have ways when it comes to DigiLocker not functioning. Rather than having a single platform, we can have more platforms of the similar idea. Electric hype hidden cost. So, the IT revolution has been a game changer in the fight against climate change, which promises to reduce the carbon emission and promote sustainable transformation. But the thing is that it is not friendly in the long term since resource constraints, environmental implication, and social economic challenges raise questions about the long term sustainability of this shift. So, over here, we can talk about lithium and cobalt, which are very critical components of the EV batteries. And producing an EV is more energy intensive than manufacturing of additional internal combustion of the Indian vehicle. So it must be a tempting solution, but it would not be the most efficient path forward, especially when it comes to a country like India, which has a very large population. And when we talk about lifespan of the EV batteries, that also ranges from 8 to 15 years, after which the disposal becomes an environmental challenge, even recycling them. So it is neither economically viable or environmentally friendly. So here we can talk about buses, taxis, and auto rickshaws and trains, which form the backbone of mobility for millions of Indians, and we can move towards electrifying them, basically strengthening the public transportation while making it environment friendly. And these modes of transport would have a more far-reaching impact and would also reduce emissions and air pollutions as well. So, exploring alternative technologies such as hydrogen fuel cells or solid state batteries, which would diversify India's clean mobility. And this would require a balanced approach, integrating the energy development, public transportation, electrification, and alternative technologies. So, over here, we can talk about a holistic strategy which would help India to achieve its climate goals and drive sustainable and equitable transportation system. State Youth Festival Haryana, Yuva Sammelan and Cultural Evening. So, over here, we can talk about the youth of the country and how India's youth population is potentially demographic dividend, which basically means if we harness the youth correctly, it could contribute to a significant economic growth, and a youthful population which would basically provide an opportunity to focus on education and skill development, creating a high skilled workforce that can meet the demands of various industries. Even when it comes to innovation and entrepreneurship, the youth is more open to innovation and new technologies, and they can also drive the development of new industries and startups, which would foster the economic diversification. Even digital connectivity, since the youth is more tech savvy and it can play a crucial role when it comes to adopting and promoting digital technologies, contributing to the growth of digital economy as well. And if we talk about challenges over here, so that would include underemployment and mismatch. um, Skills mismatch, they're equally pressing issues, and many young Indians, they find jobs that are below their skill levels or they do not align with their education, which not only leads to dissatisfaction, but it also hampers productivity and economic growth. It is very important to harness the youth more productively. Even mental health problems among the youth are on the rise, and there is significant stigma associated with seeking help, which is deeply ingrained in the Indian society, and it discourages the young people from accessing proper care. Then, gender inequality and traditional norms. So, despite progress, gender inequality remains significant concerns. And if we talk about way forward, so over here we can talk about integrating skill ecosystem, where we have a comprehensive skill ecosystem combining formal education with experimental learning and apprenticeship and online platforms, which would bridge the gap between theoretical knowledge and practical skills, and it would also enhance employability. Then, entrepreneurship in traditional crafts, so fostering entrepreneurship among young artisans by combining traditional crafts with modern designs and marketing techniques, which would involve creating platforms for selling handcrafts and products online. Even youth diplomacy and cultural exchanges. So this would include cultural changes between young people in India and other countries, which would foster global understanding, diplomacy, and cross-border friendships. So this is all for the day. Thank you, everyone.